Okay. So, what I want to talk about, Mary Beth, off the top of my head, I'm just going to kick this off, right?
Go right ahead.
Is I'm not even going to introduce myself. I'm not even going to talk about all that. I'm going to talk about what brings people, pretty much every single person to our group. The first thing I want to talk about is grief. And so, would you tell us about your grief experience?
Well, my beautiful husband, Paul, passed after an 18-month journey with pancreatic cancer. And when he passed, it wasn't a surprise that because he was so very ill at the end, but the amount of pain that I felt after he passed was shocking and horrifying. I felt, of course, tremendous sorrow like I've never felt in my life. But not only that, everything in my body hurt. Every cell in my body hurt. My hair hurt. My teeth hurt. My every muscle. I just felt like I had been. I tell people I equate it to. I felt like I was hit by a train, and then as a train went past, I caught onto the back of it, and it dragged me over tracks that were made of cut glass. And even that doesn't describe the depth of the pain. It was so all encompassing, I could barely function.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's pretty much my experience of it. It felt like I was, of course, in complete pain. I was in complete despair. It felt hopeless. I felt helpless and hopeless, and the pain was just overwhelming, and it would come in. It was like always constant, but the really bad stuff would just come in waves and just take over my entire body, and all I could do was collapse on the floor and sob. And sometimes I would be driving around the car screaming. It was just like, like there was, it felt empty, but it also felt like there was a big grizzly bear inside me trying to claw its way out. And it just, there was no getting out. And I couldn't see any hope. I couldn't see any light at the end of the tunnel. And I couldn't see how I could possibly go on, you know, with that type of sheer agony all the time. Uh, so you and I have made a what I would call remarkable transformation from that grief. One of the things that I discovered early on in my grief and looking for ways to deal with it, as I kept running into people who 10, 20, 30 years down the line were still in as much grief every day. Is that your experience?
Yes, after Paul passed, a friend of mine said to me, Mary Beth, what would be a really good idea is to go on Facebook. And she recommended this particular group. I think a friend of hers had started for, I think it was for particularly for widows. And so I went on the group. I don't remember ever commenting. I just read the comments and the posts in horror because they people would say things like, my Charlie died 27 years ago and I sob every day. And my life is empty and hollow. And I have children and grandchildren, but I can't enjoy anything in this life at all. I just want to die myself. And I thought, oh Lord, kill me now, because I couldn't live like that. But I also didn't want to live without Paul. So it seemed like there was no way out. And also to speak to what you just said, William, even when I had times when I could I seemed like I was managing myself, like I would maybe go to the store. I mean, I had to function. I had to get food and supplies and, go out into the world at times. And I would compose myself and say, okay, you can do this and get myself in the car and go there. And then I'd be out someplace and all of a sudden the grief would just come up. The analogy I always make is it would come up like vomit. I would have no control over it. And I remember the medium Scott Milgram said after his father died, he said, grief has its way with us. It just takes us and knocks us around and beats us up until we're bloody and bleeding and just a mess.
Yeah. So, what was it that, what idea or how did the original idea of what might be a path through this, where did that come from? Or how did you, have that or find it?
Well, my one salvation is way before, decades before, I had started following Abraham Hicks. And Abraham Hicks, in the course of that, the woman who channels Abraham, Esther Hicks, channels Abraham, Abraham being a group of non-physical teachers, her husband, Jerry, died, her most beloved husband, partner, sweetheart. And even though she was someone who channeled this information about there's no death and, we go on and all of that, she was laid low by grief herself. And she was angry and filled with sorrow for almost a year until one day Abraham said to her, in her head, I guess, stop looking for Jerry where he was and start looking for him where he is. And so Abraham went on to say, I listened to recording after recording where they would say, when your most beloved is your most dearly not so departed lover, um, it has made their transition to the next phase of life. The very best thing you can do is to feel better yourself because they're feeling great. And they defined grief as a period of transition from which you wean yourself from trying to interpret your loved one with your ordinary human senses and then began um, to feel them with your more powerful inner senses. And they said the best way you could do that was to feel better yourself. So my plan became every day, every moment, I would say this in my head. My plan was if I wanted to feel Paul with me, I had to help myself feel better. And that's what I did. But it took a very, very long time. I mean, for me, it took a long time. And I know and tell a bit about your journey. You were able to really move a bit quicker, more quickly through the process. That
Right. Like you, I was fortunate in that I already had decades of, uh, ways of dealing with my, issues and problems psychologically. Uh, and a lot of it is really similar to what, Abraham teaches. I was aware of Abraham, uh, and other law of attraction things like Neville Goddard, but I was also aware of, various psychological techniques, like neurolinguistic reprogramming and, the power of repeating narratives over and over inside your internal dialogue and making affirmations. And I knew that these things actually rewired your synapses, rewired the architecture in your actual brain and your nervous system. It's how they deal with, it's how they treat a lot of people who suffer from PTSD. They use a lot of the visualization, imagination, and affirmation techniques. Um, so I, immediately started employing those. And, one of the reasons I think that my progress went a lot quicker, uh, is because I was in a very fortunate situation, not only because of already knowing those techniques, which, by the way, I had absolutely no faith or hope at the time that they would actually work that well. Not for this. I mean, this was too much, you know. My only goal was maybe I could get myself to the point where I could manage the pain and I could just live out the rest of my life in manageable pain. But I think the reason that, it didn't take me as long as it normally takes a lot of most other people is I had 24/7 to do it. I immediately started using it, and I would actually be on the floor. I would literally on the floor sobbing, repeating over and over, I know you're here with me. I know you love me. I know you still exist. I can feel you. I can see you. I can hear you. I can touch you. And I would always like put out her coffee, make her coffee and put her coffee out. I would always lean over and pretend I was lighting her cigarette. I would pretend these are part of these techniques where you're basically reprogramming your subconscious to believe that the person is still with you. And so in the beginning, that's all it was. I was just trying to reprogram my subconscious. I believed in the afterlife at the time, but that wasn't any help to me at all. That belief wasn't any help at all. But yeah, I was able to do it 24/7. I was alone here in the house. I worked from home and I worked very few hours a week, and so I was able to devote all my time to it, and it became my full time and part time job, so to speak. Is I was because there was just there I knew that I just couldn't I could not survive. I would not I would not allow myself to live the rest of my life like that in that kind of pain. It was too much for me. So I think that that history. Another thing that I think was really worked in our favor, was that, and this is not true for everybody in this situation, people in our group. And for those who don't know, the people in our group are all people who have their romantic partner died. And that's everybody in our group is that. And everybody in our group is working to develop that relationship. They are committed to that relationship. And what was I saying? One of the things was that uh, I had support. Now I know that you didn't particularly have support, but I had the support of my entire family. But I think one of the things that worked for both you and I was that our relationship, while they were alive, had reached a point of being like a fairy tale, and we didn't have any unresolved issues. We didn't have any angry issues, any of that type of stuff. None of that was going on at the time. Like no unanswered questions or things we had to worry about. So I think we were extremely fortunate that that was the case, because I think that those kind of things can really compound this process. Do you think so?
Well, absolutely. I feel very, very, very fortunate that I had been married twice before to two lovely people, but Paul was it for me. And we just had this easy breezy, beautiful romance. We both agreed. We would say, "Can you believe it?" I mean, it's no work. A lot of times these, and because I had two other marriages, I've read like every marriage counseling book on the market, and was in marriage counseling for many years with my second husband. And when I was with Paul, I said, it's just no work at all. We really didn't work at it. We just got along so easily. It was just magical, especially in comparison to a relationship that requires a lot of work. And that's fine for some people. Sometimes that work results in a really lovely relationship. But for Paul and me, it was just easy, really, really easy. The other thing I wanted to mention was um, after Paul passed, I continued to listen to Abraham, and they talked a lot because Esther's husband in recent couple of years earlier had passed. There was a lot of discussion about what happens when your most beloved passes. And Abraham said something that I thought was really extraordinary. They said that once Esther stopped looking for Jerry where he was and started looking for him where he is, because he still exists, her relationship with him grew even better than when he was physically focused on earth. And I remember thinking, this is clear as a bell to me. Paul passed over 10 years ago now, but I remember this as if it was 2 seconds ago. I remember thinking, well, I don't know if I could do that. I mean, that's really, that's Esther. She's a channel. I'm just me. I'm not a medium. I'm not anything, but I'm going to aim to get as close as I possibly can. And so that was my goal. I like setting goals, and I'm kind of goal oriented and very action oriented. Like, what can I do to solve this issue? And so, with that in mind, that was my goal. My primary goal was I decided I wanted to feel as good as I possibly could feel to make this relationship that we're calling transdimensional as good as possible. And it really did work. It really did work. My relationship with Paul right now is even better than when he was physically focused. If you can imagine that, because we had this fantastic, fabulous relationship when he was here. But it's even better in many, many ways. And I don't look back, like I don't say, oh, I wish Paul was still here and why did this happen? I don't do that. I really don't. And I also made a habit of not I don't know if this is jumping ahead, William, but I made one of the typical things that people suffer from when their partner passes, or really any loved one, is shoulda, coulda, woulda. You start going into this hamster wheel of why didn't I do this? Why didn't we go to that doctor? Why did I say this? Oh my gosh, well, like all these regrets and things. And I did that too. I remember exactly where I was standing in our house, and I remember thinking, well, why? Oh, Paul, why didn't? And I stopped myself. And I said, no, Mary Beth, you are not going to do that to yourself. I'm very good at giving myself little lectures. I said, you are not going to do that to yourself. Number one, that's not going to bring Paul back into his physical body. It doesn't it doesn't forward you to your goal of feeling Paul with you at all. It just heaps more pain on agony. And so I just said, no, I am not, absolutely not going to do that. And I never did after that. I knew I had loved Paul as best I could. I knew I had done the very best job possible to care for him when he was suffering. And one of the very last things he said to me before he passed was, I think this whole thing brought us even closer together. So I focused on those things. I didn't focus on the other things that are so typical to come in. And I read somewhere that people do that, the shoulda, coulda, woulda, because psychologically, this is a situation that we have absolutely zero control over. Your house burns down, you can build another house, right? You lose your job, you can get another job. But when your partner passes, I mean, you can get a different partner, but if you want that person back in your life in a physical way, that ain't happening. No matter how much you wail and pound the wall or anything, that's not going to happen. So if you want to be with them, you have to find a different way, a different path. And beating yourself up, shoulda, coulda, woulda, it's psychologically a way people try to get control over an uncontrollable situation. And so you have to find it. You're forced. If you want to have a really wonderful, loving relationship again, you're forced to find another path. And that's what worked for me.
I agree. That's you have to find a whole different set of ways of sensing them, communicating with them, interacting with them, and you have to find a whole different way of thinking about the relationship. Because prior the relationship was really something, at least physically, that you didn't really have to think about that much, because you could just see them and hear them and touch them.
Mhm.
But now you have to kind of organize that differently, and I say that because um, it's a whole different way of understanding the relationship, because a lot of people, the way that they have relationships is through touch and through sound, hearing the voice, talking things out where you can specifically hear them. And that's really important, that sense of them being around and regaining that sense of them being there. It like has to go through different channels. You have to find a different way to find that. So yeah, you're right. It kind of forces you to rethink and try different things. And so one of the things I was gonna well, on the subject of grief, like some of the things I never had to consider was like, did Irene really love me? Or would she want to do this? Those are things I never really even had to consider. I never really had that didn't even pop in my head. And I know a lot of people do have those doubts and those worries. Uh, and absent, being able to just physically talk to them to work that out, you have to find a different way and a different path towards resolving any issues you have. So, well, another question I wanted to ask was, what brought you to, um, did you always have the idea of the afterlife? Was that just something that was naturally in you to think about? I know you talked about Abraham and you were a fan of Abraham, but they don't really talk about the afterlife much. So what started you and what was your journey like about the afterlife?
That's absolutely true, William. I've followed Abraham. I've seen them in person through the years. I took Paul one time, he was not, he was kind of like a, you know, dead is dead kind of guy. But early on, we agreed to respect each other's points of view. And, I was, to be honest, I was more entertained by Abraham for a long time until I was desperate for their message. And they reassured that we go on, that people go on, but they don't focus on the afterlife. And if someone asks them a question, if you listen carefully to their recordings for a long enough time and you're looking for answers about the afterlife, what they'll do, if someone asks a question about the afterlife, they'll answer it, but very quickly redirect the conversation back to this life. And no one's ever said this, but I'm assuming, dangerous thing to do. I assume that the reason Abraham does that is because their mission is to help people navigate this physical lifetime. And they reassure that there's an afterlife, but they're not interested in going and describing that in detail. And so to find out about the afterlife for me wasn't to listen to Abraham to discover that was unsatisfying because they didn't have enough information for me to hang my hat on. Well, Paul exists, but is he a puff of smoke? I heard all sorts of things, puff of smoke, an orb. The energy goes on. None of those things were satisfying. I wanted to hug him and hold him and kiss him and hear his voice in my ear. And I remember laying my head on his chest and hearing his heartbeat. That's what I wanted. I didn't want him to be just some, amorphous thing that I couldn't get my mind and heart around. And so I was forced, well, I shouldn't say forced, maybe invited is a better word. I was invited to begin to learn more about the afterlife because until that point, I hadn't really had a need to learn about it. Both my parents passed, and I loved my parents, and I was sad. But the sadness I felt, I don't even think it was grief. My parents both died. They were elderly. They loved each other. They lived good lives. And I don't know, it seemed like a natural passing. But this Paul passing was a completely different thing. I've never felt agony like this before. And so I started, like most people do, trying to educate myself about what does happen when we die. And I tried to, read different, like a lot of people, I did a multi-pronged approach. I read books, I went to events, I watched videos, I did anything I could that would reassure me that when I passed, that I would be with Paul again. And that was one of the last conversations we had, Paul and I, when he was very near the end of his life. He said to me, he was kind of sweet. He said to me, I don't want to hurt your feelings, but I'm not afraid to die. He literally died like a day and a half later. And I didn't argue with him. I didn't say, oh, no, no, no. I didn't know because part of our whole relationship was allowing the other person to be who they were. And so I mean, as much as it broke my heart, I just said, I mean, I knew he had enough. And I said, well, when you get to the other side, will you send me signs? And he said, if I can, I will. And I said, and when it's my turn to cross, will you be there for me? He said, if I can, I will. That was the sum total of our discussion about this. And so I started going down the avenue of looking at all the different resources, but there's a lot of conflicting information. And some of it was really comforting, and some of it was thrilling. And a lot of stuff was quite scary to me and was frightening and made me feel worse than ever. So,
Yeah.
uh, yeah. And I didn't know how to navigate that. I was also at the time very vulnerable still and in a lot of pain. And so the whole thing was like a big, I don't know, it was really difficult. So, how about you with that, William?
Well, I mean, I'd always believed there was an afterlife of some sort uh, since I was a little kid. And like most people, you don't really give it a whole lot of thought, but uh, I'd been like examining the Victor Zammit site about psychic stuff and life after death long before Irene died. because I was just interested in that type of stuff. I was kind of metaphysically oriented. My family is metaphysically oriented. So, my head was always in that type of stuff. I've had a lot of paranormal experiences my whole life. Um, None of that helped when Irene died, but, also like you, what you just kind of naturally want or to find some type of information, that it's helpful in this search because it's so painful. I mean, I guess I pride myself on doing my stuff by myself as much as I can and sorting myself out as best I can that way. But everybody I think enjoys, and it helps to have a little bit of support. Have somebody else agreeing with you or providing information that is, like you said, you were looking for stuff that actually helped you feel better. And you would run into some of that stuff, but then you'd also run into this other stuff that had the opposite effect on you. And so I immediately uh, believed that Irene was in the afterlife because I had the long-standing belief that we used to watch medium shows all the time, shows with mediums. And I immediately thought of it in terms of that she is that I will be able to see her again. I will be able to feel her and touch her again. Uh, because nothing else really mattered to me. So I had to believe that in order to go forward. So my path forward, because I'm extremely anti-authoritarian, was to go find the information, find places where people were talking about it, either videos or books or online forums, Facebook groups. And I guess I was looking for, people to help support my perspective that Irene still existed physically, not here, but somewhere, and that we could be together again. And I ran into a lot of resistance on that idea. And uh, so the thing was is that a lot of people come to this they come to this out of grief, and they come to it with the hope that there's an afterlife. And the problem is that when they start looking into the afterlife information and evidence and sites and sources, it in my opinion, it's a minefield of problems. I mean, it's it's full of people with all kinds of different beliefs and ideas and perspectives. You have people who are supposedly channeling entities that live in the afterlife. You got the people like astral projectors, like Jürgen Zive, who visit the afterlife, and Emanuel Swedenborg, who visited the afterlife, talking about what they saw, what they experienced, and what they believe about it. And so the thing was is that I found it to be it's kind of a double-edged sword. There's plenty of evidence that the afterlife exists, an extreme amount there, and the evidence dates back well over 100 years and was researched by some of the top scientists in history who said it just came out and said that yes, it's been. They said, I'm not saying this, but they said it was science. They scientifically proved that it exists, that people do continue to exist, and so there's an enormous amount of different categories of evidence about the afterlife existing. And one of the things that even though I went into groups, and these were like the more spiritually oriented groups, which we might get into, which is I found out that anytime you go into an afterlife group or an afterlife resource, there is a spiritual or religious element to it that the people always bring into the situation. And that's where you get all the conflicting information, all the conflicting ideas and conflicting beliefs. Uh, and when it was just like based on evidence, what I found was that the evidential stuff all indicated that we have physical bodies, that we have it's a physical world, more real. They consider it more real, their world more real and more solid than this world. They have all of their senses and more, their five senses and more. They have all of their capabilities. They can eat, drink, hike, bowl, drive cars. They have homes, houses. There's landscapes. There's animals. Basically, anything that you can find here. Jürgen Zive, who has visited the afterlife thousands of times, said if you want to know what the afterlife is like, just look around. Look around your house. Go outside and look around outside. That's what the afterlife is like. And so that didn't really comport well with a lot of the more spiritual beliefs and the more I would religious or esoteric beliefs or whatever about what people were saying. And the kind of stuff that I ran into that I think a lot of people ran into. Well, the first thing I ran into was there's no romantic relationships in the afterlife. That was like the first thing, the first group I entered. That's the first thing somebody said to me. Well, you have to let her go. Let her go. She's beyond all that now. You're holding her back. So my whole thing about that was, holding her back from what? Was I holding her back while she was here? It didn't really make a lot of sense to me. And besides, aren't we eternal beings? Are they on a schedule or something? So it was like that didn't make any sense to me. But you find this kind of thing everywhere when people are talking about or giving information out about the afterlife. And that's really one of the main reasons I wanted to start doing this, was because that's just so harmful to a lot of people. There's just a minefield out there of all of these different types of beliefs. And when you're struggling in deep grief and trying to make sense of what happened to you, and you're trying to figure out how can I go on and how can I talk to my partner, and you're immediately bombarded when you're searching for afterlife information, you're immediately bombarded with all of this scary stuff that you're doing something wrong, or this things don't exist, or this is unspiritual, blah blah blah. That just compounds the problem. Was that your experience?
Well, yeah, I mean, you're describing exactly my experience. I remember reading a book about, and I'm not saying this is not true, the book, but the book was written by these people who had a young child who, I don't know, at the age of 3 or 4. I read this book many years ago, so, don't hold me to the details, but it was something about this little boy. He was really, really young, like 3, 4 years old, and he began quoting baseball statistics from a famous baseball player, and all this kid wanted to do was play baseball, but he had like all the jargon, and it was like way advanced for a little tiny kid. And the parents in this unfolding story said that they believed that he was a reincarnated um, child who was reincarnated from this very famous baseball player that everybody knows. And I started thinking about that. And on one hand, that information was kind of cool. Like, oh, well, then reincarnation means that, life goes on and all that. But then what struck me was I started thinking about this, like in relation to my romance with Paul. And I thought, oh my God, what if I die and Paul's already reincarnated and then I don't even get to see him ever again? And then here's other things I worried about, because I could worry. I knew how to nip it in the bud, but sometimes it would get away from me. It would just like have a little momentum of its own. And I remember thinking, oh, about reincarnation. I didn't really know a whole heck of a lot about it. I think it exists, but I think, we're still, as a humanity, we're still learning more about it. But anyway, I also thought, well, I know Paul loves me, but what if after he died, he met someone he loved even more from some other lifetime, and then they're a couple, and then and I would like work myself up into a frenzy, which would be, pain heaped upon pain. And I would be able to kind of stop myself and calm myself down. But it took a lot. It was really, really difficult. And one of the resources that I did find resources that were really right on. So let me go back 1 second. A couple of things that William, people like you and I are trying to do is, number one, know for certain that there's an afterlife. know for certain that our beautiful partners are there, know for certain that they're solid and real and that they can, that they're still part of our lives. And Abraham would say that, when you begin looking for them where they are, that's the way to, get through the grief and find the love on the other side of the grief. But there's a whole lot of people saying that grief never goes away, that it's going to be with you forever and ever. So I'm just listing these things because these are the things that people like you and I were up against because I didn't want to have any grief at all. I certainly wanted to believe that to know that there was an afterlife. I wanted to know that Paul was there. I wanted to know he was still in love with me. Not some entity I was like making up in my head out of fear. So there are a lot of things that I wanted confirmation on, and there's not a whole heck of a lot of confirmation on the notion that you can continue or that you would even want to continue a romance with someone who you is your most precious person. That doesn't seem to be a thing. And a lot of the spiritual and certainly the religious teachings, they don't focus on that at all. And a lot of times they just throw it by the wayside, like that's not important. But that was important to me, is central to my being. And even Abraham, Abraham would reassure that there was an afterlife, like I said, but they didn't say exactly how, they didn't give enough information for how to get there. The one piece of it, I did start to discover some pieces of information that were really good for me. One of them was when I read books by Patrick Matthews, a medium. And Patrick Matthews would say, you want to know where the afterlife is? Stick your arm out. That's where the afterlife is. And it's just another dimension with a different set of physics. And and he would say that you can't, there's no, grief is, he would say, he wouldn't word it the same way as Abraham, but that certainly you can have an enjoyable, delicious, romantic, ongoing, committed relationship with the person if you want that, if you both want that. And that to me was like, being in a desert and getting a drink of cold water. I was like, oh, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. And I did discover other resources that said that. And one of them was the Annie Nanji recordings that were recorded by medium Leslie Flint, with Annie on the other side and her husband on this side. And in seance, they would talk with each other. And he would say, things like, they spoke for 15 years. Her husband would travel to London where the medium Leslie Flint was, and they would have these seances a couple times a year for 15 years. And so I listened to all of them. I began transcribing them. I wrote a book about them because I was so entranced with them, because these were two people like Paul and me who were enthralled with each other. And he would say to her, when I get to be with you again, will you be able to feel my kiss upon your lips? And she would say, oh, my darling, of course. Where I am now is more, like you said, William, more solid and real than your experience where you are. And so to me, that meant, okay, it's solid, it's real. They can hold each other, hug each other. She was reassuring all the things. And granted, she's only one person in the afterlife, but I thought if there's just one, if there's just one, then it's possible for Paul and me. But a lot of the information I read was terrifying. It was, I don't know, there were other books, I won't throw anybody under the bus. And maybe those other things are true for people. And maybe they gave other people comfort and confidence and reassurance. Maybe they sounded good to other people, but they they were frightening to me. So what I learned to do, and this is partly, William, because when you and I met up online, you had said something that was, you said many valuable things, but one of the earliest valuable things you said was to pay attention to the resources that feel good. And remember, I was on my feel good journey, feel good so I can feel Paul with me. So you said, pay attention to the resources that help you to feel good and ignore the rest because those other resources are not meant for you. So that's what I did. I just sifted and sorted, and I stayed on the path of feeling good. And I want to add one more thing. I not to go backtrack in our conversation, but right after Paul, well, I was born in Ireland, and I was in an orphanage for about a year and adopted to a family in New York, so Buffalo, New York. So I grew up in the United States. But eventually, when Paul and I were together, I found my family of origin, and I went back and met them. And they could. Paul and I went to Ireland, and we met all of them. A big, as my cousin said, a big Irish family, and they couldn't have been lovelier to me. But after Paul died, I got a phone call from a different cousin. His name was Les. And Les said to me, with his Irish accent, he said, Mary Beth, you don't know me. I'm one of your cousins, but I live in Copenhagen. And I heard about you and your Paul. Now, I never met him because he was in Copenhagen and we were in Ireland. And he said, I want to just tell you something. I want to warn you about something. Grief has a seductive quality to it. There's a dark romantic quality to it. And if you allow it to, it will suck you under. And I just want to warn you about that. And his sister, he told me, his beloved sister, who he loved so much as an adult, had thrown herself off a cliff onto the rocks in Ireland and killed herself. And he really didn't feel like he was going to survive that. And he said, I know grief. I know grief, and I know its seductive qualities.
Yeah.
And so I kept that in mind, when he told me that from someone who had been through it. And that was very helpful. So, the stay feeling good path, and not to get sucked down in the grief, and to only pay attention to the resources that supported that for me. That's what I did.
Right. Right. So that's one of the things I've often uh, thought about grief. Can you hear me? My audio quality just changed. Will you say something?
Hello.
Okay. Thank you. That was weird. So, uh, one of the troubles that I had with grief, and this is a freewheeling conversation. We don't have to stay on a particular subject. Um, One of the things that I understood about grief was that as the grief was lessening, um, the I started feeling guilty, and I started feeling like that meant I was losing my connection with Irene. And it wasn't. I was doing practicing some. I was writing her a letter, and I was gonna tell her about this. I was telling her about this. That's one of the things that I would do often was write her letters. And I felt her take over, and that's when she told me that you don't have to be in pain. You don't have to be in pain to show me that you love me. And it was an incredible relief. I mean, it was just like I just realized, yeah, this is true. I don't have to hold on to this pain as a memorial, as a tribute to my love for my wife. And that was very freeing and very liberating for me. Realize she's not going to be mad at me for being happy. so, so I mean, she wants me to be happy, uh, not with somebody else, but she wants me to be happy. Uh, so anyway, yeah, there's a lot. The being in this group for 8 years has demonstrated that there's I think somebody called it the whack-a-mole problem. As soon as you get one problem apparently solved, another whack-a-mole pops up, and you have to deal with that. So yeah, grief is like an endless subject to talk about, and there's many different things that contribute to it and make it very difficult to uh, get past and to get beyond. Um, but in turn, go ahead.
I was just going to insert that. Um, I don't want to be judgmental. So there are many, let me put it this way. There are many people who honor their grief, and they feel like that. And I've read books like this that say um, that grief is a way of demonstrating to our sweethearts how much we feel for them. Because if you didn't feel that, it's not that big of a connection. Like the grief represents one of the sayings that goes around is grief is love with nowhere to go. Now, I don't really adhere to that only because I think grief has value, but I don't think it's love. I think grief is just the fear. I think grief is fear. I think grief is the fear that we will never, ever see them again. That's what I think grief is. But at the same time, I don't want to criticize people who value their grief as being evidence of the love. So that's what that's how I would categorize it more precisely, to say grief is the evidence of the love. Like I said, my parents passed. I love my parents, but I didn't have the depth of love for them that I do for Paul. And so I didn't feel the depth of grief that I mean, it seemed weird without my parents in the world, like kind of surrealistic, but I didn't grieve. It really, I don't even know if I grieved at all. I was just a little sad. I don't even know that that can count as grief. Um, so I don't want to criticize people. And as you often pointed out, for people like us, it doesn't matter if you grieve heavily from the day they pass to the day you pass. At the end, we all get the same prize.
Right.
But it's just that I really, for myself, by nature, I'm a fairly optimistic person, and I couldn't live with that heavy cloak of grief. I just couldn't bear it. So really, the people who are grieving and who believe that this is the that you care, as my aunt would say, you bear this cross until the end of your life. They're whole lot more courageous than I, because I couldn't bear that.
Yeah. Yeah. And so that's great. So the problem is with the afterlife and the information with the afterlife is that people are bringing that pain and the chaotic things it does to your mind into a situation where they're desperately trying to learn about the afterlife and desperately trying to find something to hold on to. And one of the like I said, one of the reasons that I wanted to start doing this was because every afterlife resource that I know of is laced with spiritual information and beliefs and ideas. And I wanted to be able to have a place where people could go and get and watch a video where they don't have to be subjected to that. And so one of the things that I've often thought about is the framework, the framework by which people think about the afterlife is for some reason, I guess it's historical, always married with religion or spirituality. It always is. And to me now, that seems as odd as saying, and I said this yesterday in the Zoom, but it's like thinking that that the very nature of going to Australia is a spiritual and religious thing. And it's not. It's just a different place. It's just another place. You can carry your spiritual beliefs there. You can carry your religious beliefs there. You can practice them there. But that doesn't make Australia innately a spiritual or religious place where, there's spiritual and religious, rules or laws or anything like that. I don't know what their laws are. I'm just saying that it's not, it now it's kind of like baffling to me. And this is why I was so resistant to all of that when I first started getting into afterlife information was, why is it always presented with this seemingly to me extraneous information or ideology or belief or catechisms of ideas about what it's all about? Like it organizes all of the afterlife and even this world into these big spiritual structural beliefs. And here's my thing about the afterlife is all I want out of the afterlife is just what I had here. That's really it. you know, I, I just want to be able to watch Wheel of Fortune with my wife and, cook up some breakfast and, putter around the yard and maybe, go to the beach or something and, just live a relatively normal life, that's a little bit better because we're not aging and getting old and getting diseases and, we don't have to worry about taxes or that type of stuff. And to me, that's like paradise. I mean, I already lived in paradise here. I had it with Irene. I still had to pay taxes, and I still had to do this and that. But that was just really close, to paradise. And I it it I didn't think in terms in my life here in this place. I didn't think in terms of, I mean, I did when I was much younger, but after I met Irene, I like I was spiritual when I met Irene. Uh, but when I met Irene, it was like I found everything I was looking for. I mean, this woman is everything that I was looking for on my spiritual journey. You know, this is it. And I realized this is what I'm looking. This is what I've really been looking for all this time. And so that's really all I want, out of all this. And when people like me, which I just consider ordinary person with ordinary desires and an ordinary way of life, uh, when we start hitting that afterlife information, it's like there's two sides to this afterlife information, and one is from an immense amount of information, including what the dead themselves say through various means, and what the people who visit it regularly say is there's an immense amount of people, countless people, who are living ordinary lives over there. They're just doing their daily thing, living their daily lives. They have their friends, they have their family who they hang out with, the activities that they enjoy doing, uh, just like this world. And they're not even thinking about spiritual stuff. They're just walking around with their physical bodies, doing their physical things. I mean, they may have uh, other things that they can do, so like additional perks and additional opportunities or whatever. But by and large, when these people describe life in the afterlife, they don't describe and they don't make this commentary about uh, this big spiritual system. You know what I mean? They're just talking about doing basically ordinary things. And but the people who like the people on the other side who are like channeling like Eric and Seth and other people who are channeling this information, and even the people who are visiting over there who have spiritual beliefs, they add on this spiritual thing, about what it's all about, what you're supposed to be doing, that eventually, in the scary information that came up recently, that you'll eventually leave all your relationships behind and you'll graduate to a collective of unified unconditional love. And I don't want that. I don't want any part of that. That's not. I don't think of that and go, oh, that sounds great. I think of that and go, oh, that's awful. that's that's just an awful thing to happen. And there's other things like like I don't know, that some people find weird, like or scary, like soul contracts and karmic obligations and blah 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 and all this stuff. But the dead people don't talk about that stuff so much. Sometimes you get that through like an NDE experience, and people have that kind of experience. But the people who are long dead, I don't know that I've ever read an account anywhere of or listened to an account from a dead person who talked about their a fully dead person, not an NDE experience, a fully dead, long dead person who talked about soul contracts or who talked about reincarnation. Or I mean, I think once in a while they say something about having past lives together, but they very rarely talk about reincarnation. They rarely, if ever, talk about a life review process. I mean, they talk about they're hiking with their friends. They talk about they're doing just ordinary things in their life. They're teaching or they're helping people who are newly dead, or they're down in the libraries learning stuff about other places, or they're going to other places, to explore. Uh, and so there's like there's a strange thing going on where it appears that life over there is exactly from the physical descriptions. It's exactly what I want. Exactly what I want. Right. But from the esoteric spiritual community, there's all this other stuff that's just like, if I had to think about that, and this is why I just kind of shoved all that aside. If I had to think about all that, it would ruin it for me. If that was, it'd be like, this is what it's like to me. And this is actually kind of an example. It's like If somebody lays a great big religious trip on me about sex, what am I thinking about during sex? And right, oh my God, this is a sin. I'm going to hell. I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing. And it ruins it for me. Am I making any sense here, Mary Beth?
Yeah. Yes, 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 yes. This is why I love talking with you, William. Um, I wanted to add something that I thought was really funny and apt based on what you're just saying. You know, getting back to the topic of NDEs, near death experiences, somebody once asked Abraham about NDEs and how come people report different things. You know, some people with NDEs report that they see Jesus, or some people with NDEs report that they, I don't know, they saw their spouse or their child or their dog, or that they went to some horrific place, or they went to some glorious field of. How come it's all so different? And Abraham said, "Well, you have to remember that with NDEs, near death experiences, the operative word is near. They didn't they didn't get there. They didn't experience the whole thing. And it would be as though you got on a plane and flew to Paris. And you got off the plane and you got in a cab because you wanted to see the Eiffel Tower. And you took the cab near the Eiffel Tower and you opened the door and you stepped out and your foot went deeply into a puddle of water. And you said, and you went, whoa, I don't like this. And you pulled your foot back in and you closed the door and you went home because you didn't want to be in Paris. You know, they don't get the full experience of what the afterlife is going to be for them. And you know, something else you said about that the afterlife, so many reports are that it's so similar to this. And that is something Abraham said. Abraham said there are some differences, but it's very, very similar, except better. and so that's what I think. You know, for a lot of time, a lot of different discussions, people will say, well, when you get over there, it's popular to hear that there are libraries. And if you're an artist, you can do art. And if you're an architect, you can build magnificent buildings. But then they would say, there's no food. You know, like you don't have to eat. And I remember thinking, well, wait a minute, what if you're a chef? You know, you might not be an architect, but what if you're a chef and you consider the dishes that you create works of art? They're not allowed to do that? There were so many discrepancies. And it reminded me in many ways of and I don't want to, disrespect anybody's belief system, but it reminded me a lot of my upbringing in Catholicism because there were so many discrepancies in what I was hearing and learning, and that, didn't make sense to me. And I remember one time when I was 10 years old, we went to church. I was very steeped in religion. My parents were very religious. We went to church every week. If you didn't go to church, you were going to hell, literally. And I went to Catholic school. So, and almost everybody in my neighborhood were Catholic. It was, really, really an immersive experience. And this one year, I remember it clearly because I was 10 years old. And that was the year that my little sister and I, for Christmas, we got Barbie dolls. Or we were hoping for the Santa Claus would bring us Barbie dolls. And so I did this whole speech one time where I told the whole story about how we woke up at Christmas morning and my sister and I, we couldn't go into the living room to see what Santa left until we woke up our parents. And we woke our parents up and they came out and my mother started making Christmas dinner. And so the smell wafted through the house and blah, 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 and the Christmas tree. And we opened our gifts and there were the Barbies and all this magnificent thing. And then we put on our beautiful little party dresses that my aunt had bought us for gifts. And we were so excited to go to church. And we go to church and the priest said at the homily, he said, and I'm all excited. It's such a perfect moment after singing the Christmas carol. And he says, Christmas is not about the Christmas finery. And it's not about the Christmas gifts. And it's not about the family gathering around the table for the feast. Christmas is a reminder that one day you will die And if you die without sin on your soul, you will be allowed to gaze upon the face of God for all of eternity. And I remember sitting there with my family. First of all, popped my Christmas bubble. And I thought in my head, well, God, I love you. And it would be nice to meet you, but I really don't want to gaze upon your face for all of eternity. I would really rather play with my Barbie doll. But I couldn't tell anybody this because if I told my parents, they would think I was worried they would think I was terribly wicked. And I was even worried that I told God that God knew that because I didn't want to go to hell. And I lived with the threat of hell over my life, my whole life, if I had a bad thought or anything like that. And there was never any mention in all the years I went to church, there was never, ever any mention of when you die, you will be reunited with your loved ones. Ever once do I remember that message. And so none of that religious training helped me when Paul died.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's a perfect example of it is that I just see all of the um, spiritual stuff that the teachings, the structures, the progression, and all of that as for me, it's just not really confusing. It just sucks the joy out of my life. You know, it's like I was before I met Irene, I was basically just existing. I wasn't I didn't feel really bad. I didn't feel really good, but I was basically just existing. My goal was just to okay, just get through this life and get to the end of it, and we'll go on from there. And and then I met Irene, and it was just like, man, this is what it's all about for me. This person is what it's all about for me. I had this great love, this great passion, and always have had, even now. It really only grown. Um, it motivates me. It fills me with happiness. She fills me with joy, sense of comfort, and she makes me feel whole. She makes me feel complete. I have zero angst with her about anything. Just zero angst about anything. Even if I get upset about something or start feeling angst, I can just get her and sit next to her for 5 minutes, and I'm whole. I feel fine. All those worries have just gone out of my head. And so, like for me, I knew that this is what it's all about for me. But when there's this spiritual information that takes that relationship that is everything to me, it's literally everything to me, and says that's really something you're going to have to leave behind at some point. Uh, based on what? Based on what? I mean, my question about this stuff is: do these people never are they never satisfied with where they are? Are they never satisfied with what they have? Are they never satisfied with how they feel? Is it always chasing the next spiritual high or the next spiritual progression? It's like an endless video game, and until you hit the final boss, and then what? What's the payoff at the end of that? I mean, I've already experienced something that to me is the ultimate payoff, is the ultimate end, and that's just my normal life with my wife, my love for her, her love for me, and what we have together is, all I could ever. I never even imagined that existed. I had no idea that existed uh, until I met her and fell in love with her, and so I wonder if I wonder what it is about this. Well, I'm not going to get off into that right now. What I'm going to say is this: is that one of the things I hope that we can do here is disassociate the afterlife and disassociate our relationships from the spiritual morass that they seem to be lodged in whenever you get information about the afterlife and whenever you learn about the afterlife and that it's real. See, for me, the afterlife existing is just the natural state of affairs. That's all it is. It's just the natural state affairs. And even calling it the afterlife is like a miscommunication. It's just life. Just like life is life here, life there is just life. And it's just like Abraham said, it's just a continuation of life. It's what everybody, the people who actually die say this. They say, what do they say? There is no death. Is that when you die, you just continue living. You just continue living. And you're not it's not a necessity or an obligation that just because the afterlife exists, then spiritual stuff and religious stuff are proven or shown or you know what I mean? Or that it's a necessarily a part of each other. It's just a continuation of life. And you don't have to navigate all of this spiritual stuff. You just have to, I mean, you can if you want. If you enjoy that, that's great. If you want to go down that path, I'm all for it. You do you, and enjoy it. And I respect that, and I'm behind it. But you don't have to. You're under no obligation to take on all of these ideas. Hold on a second. We actually have a question here. How do you look for your romantic partner where he or she is? I love that. That's a good question. Mary Beth, you're the one who said that about Abraham, so please take the floor.
Right. So my understanding of that, what worked for me was they are, of course, with you, but they're not with you physically. We do have like sometimes little occurrences, people sometimes they see sometimes it's a little touch, sometimes somebody hears your voice, there sometimes little bits and pieces bleed through. Sometimes people who are really super fortunate, they actually get, a visual of their partner. I met a woman once who said that her husband, I had a long conversation with her, and she said that her husband who had passed, oh, she was sitting on the couch watching television, and all of a sudden he was right there next to her. And they hugged, and she said he was solid as real as you are to me, as Mary Beth as you are to me. And so that kind of thing happens, but it's rare and it's not constant. I don't know anybody who's had their person come back in that kind of form, on a regular basis, just and certainly not on command whenever you want them there. It just isn't true. So you have to begin looking for them where they are means that you first of all it's very subtle. You can look for what I call, let me see if I can get all of these. It's like, I think four S's. There's signs and synchronicities and sensations. And there's one other one if I can think of it. But like I remember, for example, I wasn't even trying. It was not long after Paul passed, and I was still grieving, of course. It was only say a week after he passed, and I wasn't thinking of him. And I was brushing my teeth over the sink, and all of a sudden I was flooded with the sensibility of Paul. I just knew he was there. Except at that point in time, I was in so much pain that it was shocking at first, like, oh my God. And then it was sadness because it triggered the missing of him. It wasn't satisfying the way it would be nowadays for me. But it still was a sensation. So I knew he was there. And I think because I was not actively thinking of the grief or thinking of him, somehow it allowed him to rush in. And I began to notice more and more. Part of it is, on our part, it's noticing these different things. It's hard to say because people in the beginning, they're so desperate, they're looking for signs everywhere. I think part of it is just to kind of relax and trust, and signs will appear. And so that's one way that they communicate with us. For me, everybody's different. For me, the sensations are very powerful, and I've noticed them especially when I'm feeling happy about something, and it doesn't even have to be related to Paul. I remember I'm a puppeteer, and I was doing a school program one day, and I was driving home after the program, and it was very successful. I love being with little kids. I love doing puppetry with them. And it was a beautiful autumnal day. It was just gorgeous. The sun was shining. And I was driving home thinking, well, that went well. And all of a sudden, Paul popped in. He was just there. And that's most satisfying when it's not me trying, but it's him coming to me. And I didn't really make that happen. But certainly I said earlier that I'm a very action oriented person. So I wanted to be able to do things, for him. William pointed out to me very early on that these relationships, like any relationships, are give and take. And so instead of waiting for the signs or the synchronicities or the sensations, is to offer gifts to them. Like, so I followed William's lead, and I would every day, even this morning, I make 2 cups of coffee, one for Paul and one for me. And on Valentine's Day, I celebrate every holiday. I don't dread them. I celebrate them. And every Valentine's Day, I go out and I get a heart-shaped pizza. And I set it up, and I put 2 drinks next to it and a candle and a picture of us. And I take a picture of it and I put it on Facebook, and I declare my love that way. It's like my Valentine to him. And so there's all these different things that I do. And every one of those makes me feel closer to him. And every time I see a sign, I learned this from William as well, the book of William, I say. Every time I see what I perceive to be a sign, I was having a birthday all by myself. For some reason, nobody was around. And so I thought, that's okay, Paul, we'll just celebrate my birthday together. And I took a walk and I found a little tiny rock that was a little sparkly rock in the shape of a heart. And I said, oh, thank you, Paul. Now, was that really from Paul? I don't know. I don't know. But as William would say, he said, I'm taking your script from you, William. He would say, like, if he thought he got a sign from Irene, he always would thank her and give her all his love for the sign. And he said, when I get over there, we can talk about it. And I thought, yeah, well, when I get over there, I can ask Paul, did you send me that little sparkly heart rock on my birthday? And if he did, I can thank him and love him up even more. And if he didn't, we can have just a good laugh about it. That's from the book of William. And so I don't question signs. I try to reduce any of the anxieties around it. I didn't question signs. I just saw them, and sometimes they were absolutely unmistakable signs. So huge that, you know, a hammer could hit me in the head and it wouldn't be as big as this sign coming to me. I got one time when it wasn't long after Paul passed, and I was sitting in our dining room and I was wailing. Where are you? Where are you? Really, 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 just full out grief. And there was a knock on my door that was right next to me, and I opened it, and it was a UPS guy with a big brown box, and I signed for it, and I didn't know what this was. I hadn't ordered anything or anything like that, and I opened it up, and to this moment in time, I don't know who sent it. It had a return address on it, but no name. And inside it was filled with all of these different little presents. Everyone had a ribbon wrapped around it and a little message. And the things were like it had a journal, for example, and it would say, when you want to write about Paul. Then it had a candy bar, a big candy bar, and the note said, when you need something sweet. Then it had a little package of popcorn, and it said, when you and Paul need to have a movie night together, a movie date together. And there was even like a little treats for my cat, and it said, for something like, for your cat that you and Paul love so much. And there was many, many, many little gifts. And then there was a letter, and it said, dear Mary Beth, we heard about your love that you have for Paul and how sad you are that he died. And we know that these things will not erase your grief, but we want you to know it makes me emotional to this moment. We want you to know that we're here for you and we support you, and that a love like that does not go away. And they quoted C.S. Lewis, something about, when this world does not bring you what you want, you are made for another world. It was very, very beautiful. And I have never to this moment in time learned who sent it. So I just considered that a big old gift from Paul. I don't know where it came from. I tried Googling, or I looked on Zillow for the address, and it was like some little nothing. Like it was, I don't know. It wasn't even, I thought maybe it's a store that puts these things together for people. No, it wasn't that. I don't even know if there was a building on the site. So, um, I just valued everything I got as coming from Paul. I tried not to beat myself up over anything. I tried not to worry about whether our love just disappeared because I didn't believe that. And when I did that, when I began to feel better, the signs, the symbols, the synchronicity, the sensations, they came more easily. The better I felt, the easier those things came to me. And that's how Paul is represented to me, our communication. I hope that
Yeah,
answers the question.
yeah. That's I would say in addition to those things, and those are ways of finding them where there are and seeing them for what they're doing. Um, Another thing to aspect of looking where your romantic partner is. So I once thought of it this way because Irene, we were together 27 years, and of course your bodies age, and over time, like she had lost her teeth, had all her teeth removed, had dentures put in. When she had cancer, she lost her hair, and it kind of really emaciated her body. And the one thing I realized was my love for her didn't really have anything to do with her body. It had nothing to do with her body. That's not where Irene. That's not what Irene was, or is. And so the way I look at this is to look at them where they are now is were they was the person you loved ever their body? No. If you put somebody else in that body, it would be the same body, but it wouldn't be the person you love. If they weren't who they are on the inside. And so what does that mean, who they are on the inside? Well, what that means is that's what's connected in your heart and in your mind as that person. And that's where they are. And I don't mean that in a metaphorical sense that they live in your heart and in your mind. That's where they've always lived because that's where you knew who they were. That's who you loved was them in your mind, them in your heart. And that's where that connection has always been. The bodies can fade and they can deteriorate and become injured and die. That doesn't change anything. The who they are and what they are is always in your heart and in your mind. And this is not an airy fairy kind of thing. This is real. Uh, as a lot of people have said, that all of this exists in the heart and the mind. It's not really in the physicality of things. It's in the heart and the mind. And I realized I actually can uh, look for Irene in my mind, and I can look for her in my heart. Now, what was the problem? What was preventing that? The problem is that every time I turned my mind and my heart to Irene in the beginning, I was overwhelmed with grief. And every time Irene reached out to me and I felt her reach out to me, it triggered the grief. Why was that? Because her body, which had been ingrained in me, was the representation of Irene, was gone. Okay, but that's not who Irene is. She is not that body. That's not what my love was. I mean, I loved her body, but I'm just saying that's not what my love for her was. It was about her. So when I was able to get past the grief and it not trigger my thoughts of her and my feelings for her, and when she sent that to me, when it stopped triggering the grief, and of course, when you have this grief, you're afraid of it. As Mary Beth was going to fear, right? You're afraid of it, because it hurts. It hurts really bad, and you don't want to do think thoughts like it's difficult for people to listen to the music they used to listen or that their partner loved because it triggers the grief. It's difficult to look at pictures of them because it triggers the grief. It's difficult to have memories to just remember things because it triggers the grief. But here's the thing, that is your most immediate and obvious and easy way to contact your partner, to reach out to the one you love is to think about them, to imagine them, to remember them, to look at their pictures, to listen to those songs, to 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 allow yourself to get into that loving state with them, that very intimate loving state with them. That's where they are. That's where you'll find them. And then what I found, and I think a lot of people in the group has found this too, is that the more they can tune into that, we do a lot of that in the group, the more experiences start happening. It's like opening a door. It's like you're when you get past that grief. And I'm not saying you don't have these experiences when you're in grief. You do. What I'm talking about is the ability to deliberately open that door and feel that and experience that and interact with them. And that's so that's a whole metaphysical discussion. But to me, those are the easiest. I mean, like people talk about, meditating and listening to certain vibratory music and certain types of things and guided meditations and that type of stuff. I've done all that. I've tried all that. I've tried a lot of different things. I've tried to have lucid dreams. I've tried to astral project. I've had a few astral projections, but they're just sporadic. They just have happened spontaneously now and then. But the thing that really changed everything for me was when I got past the grief and was able to deliberately, anytime I want, reach out with my heart and my mind to Irene and enjoy all of that sensation. It can be a memory. It could be me looking at her picture, listening to some music, just thinking about her, just talking to her. That puts me in this incredibly strong connection. And it didn't happen immediately, but these other sensations start filtering in. And they'll like hit you all of a sudden now and then, and then you'll feel a little bit more, and you don't really know how to categorize them. You don't really know how to explain them, but it fills me with the sense of Irene, like Mary Beth was talking about what she felt with Paul. It fills me with this sense of Irene that is, it's even better than the physical touch. It's even better than being able to look at her. It's even better than that. And I can't tell you exactly why, except I'm connecting to Irene with senses that I never really used that much during her life here, because the physical was so easy and it was every day. I could just rely on that. I didn't have to find finer senses. I didn't have to find a different way of interacting with her or communicating with her or of sensing her. But these senses are just, it's like a tidal wave of sensation of Irene pouring through me. And so I know that's where she is. I know I'm connecting with where she is. And I will say this, in addition to that, Irene had to convince me that when I was imagining her, there's a whole lot of information about imagination. That's probably a topic at some point we'll get into, maybe in a future meeting or whatever. But that I don't consider imagination to be us making up stuff in our head, stuff that doesn't exist. I don't see imagination that way. I see imagination as like a universal Google, and that you can use it to actually look at and see anything that exists. And when I am imagining Irene, I am visiting with Irene, and Irene had to beat it in my head that when I imagine her, when I imagine us someplace, when I imagine her laying down next to me, when I imagine her sitting on the porch with me, smoking a cigarette and drinking some coffee, when I imagine us, in a romantic treehouse in the middle of the forest, just the two of us. She has repeatedly had to tell me and prove to me that for her, it's entirely physical. Everything that we experience there, she is experiencing as entirely physical. It's all completely real to her. Okay. Even though I don't experience it that way. To me, it's like, imagination. It's like I'm imagining something. But she says to her, she is there and that is happening, and that's a real place. It's actually happening. And so as I've been working on accepting that, I have basically accepted it. It still has to kind of seep in some, I think. But the more I accept that, the more wonderful those experiences are becoming because I'm allowing them to be real. I'm not trying to convince myself they're not real anymore. I'm not trying to fill myself up with doubt or worry or concern that this is just me imagining things, that this is just something in my head. I've kind of gotten past all that and have made it so that I have that door open a little bit more and I can experience more of that stuff. And it's wonderful. It means that anytime I want, this was the revelation to me. Anytime I want, I can literally visit with Irene. I can literally talk with Irene. I can literally, it doesn't really look that much to me like it. I can't sense it like she can. But that's kind of like that's my end. That's my problem at my end. What we call the veil or my subconscious or the reason the way that we stay focused in this world is to not have too much attention on other places, blah, blah, blah. But like I said, as I have I'm not going to say that the resolution, the physicality, the sight and the sound of those places has gotten a lot better, but these other senses that have come in through that carry through all day. They make me happy all day. It's exactly like I have been with Irene. And it's exactly like, and I'm talking about psychologically, emotionally, it is exactly the same as and even better than when I was able to physically be with Irene. The
William,
Go ahead. No, go
excuse
ahead.
I pulled this to speak to exactly what you're talking about. I pulled up this poem that my one of my Irish cousins sent me, and it speaks so much to this topic of moving from grief and through grief to the point where when you're on the other side of it and you can begin really, really, really enjoying the satisfying, delicious, gorgeous connection that is there waiting for you. So it's not really very long. May I just read this little poem? I think everybody
Absolutely.
might
Yeah.
like it. So it's called For Grief by John O'Donohue. I hope I can get through this without tearing up. When you lose someone you love, your life becomes strange. The ground beneath you gets fragile. Your thoughts make your eyes unsure. And some dead echo drags your voice down where words have no confidence. Your heart has grown heavy with loss. And though this loss has wounded others too, no one knows what has been taken from you. When the silence of absence deepens, flickers of guilt kindle regret for all that was left unsaid and undone. There are days when you wake up happy, again inside the fullness of life until the moment breaks and you are thrown back into the black tide of loss. Days when you have your heart back, you are able to function well until in the middle of work or encounter, suddenly with no warning, you are ambushed by grief. It becomes hard to trust yourself. All you can depend on now is that sorrow will remain faithful to itself. More than you know, it knows its way and will find the right time to pull and pull the rope of grief until that coiled hill of tears has reduced to its last drop. Gradually, you will learn the acquaintance with the invisible form of your departed. And when the work of grief is done, the wound of loss will heal, and you will have learned to wean your eyes from that gap in the air and be able to enter the hearth in your soul where your loved one has awaited your return all along. Is that beautiful?
Oh yeah. It got to me.
I almost know this poem by heart, and every time I read it, I tear up because it's so beautiful. It's like this journey, like you're dragged as my cousin said, his loved one threw herself on the rocks in Ireland. You're on the rocks and you're practically dead yourself. And then I love this because the grief has a natural closure, and then, as you said many times, the grief helped reveal the depth of your love.
Yes. Yes, that's the thing. They were and that poem is so beautiful because you know it implies or it shows that it was never really even about their body. It was never even it was this is they were always in your heart and in your mind to start with. That's how you recognize them when you met them. That's how you fell in love with them. That's why they are the person is you recognize them as already being in your heart and in your mind. And when as you were as that poem says, and what we're talking about is that's where they are now. That's where they were before. Before you met this temporary physical body, that they also inhabited or was the reflection of who they already were in your mind and heart. This great love just waiting to happen. You met them and fell in love with them, but that's just their temporary body. They're still exactly where they always were, and they continue to be where they were when they were alive, and that is in your heart and in your mind. And that's not that's the more real place. That place is the more real place than what we call the physical world around us. Okay, because that's all the physical world around us really is, and that's all we responded to it as is as psychological and emotional content. Okay, that's all it is. It's a psychological and emotional feeling made solid. So
Yes,
this
yes,
is
man.
yes, all right, yeah, manifested as solid, and that's what Abraham will talk about and tell you about, and that's what like we could talk about dreams are, but this is what the afterlife is. It is a psychological and emotional landscape of physicality made solid. Okay, made real, and this your person always exists has always existed in your mind and in your heart as that thing as that which you truly love above all else above and have this great love for, and you found them. That's one of the great joys of all this is good God, we were lucky enough to have found them. We found their manifested body in this world, and we recognize them and we're with them and we know them. And even though they died, we still have them. They're still there. And we still have that great love for them. And it doesn't diminish, it only grows. And that's when that it was always this huge part of your being that you never knew until you met them. All right. Until you met them here. Uh, and I won't even say that. It's like I always felt like something was missing until I met Irene. There was always this sense that something was missing, that I didn't have something, or there was always an incompleteness about it or an angst about it. And then when I met her, it was literally like I found the missing piece, the thing that made me whole, the person that made me whole and filled all that in. And and there's still and so it's just a question, and that's really what a lot of my grief was that this person who made me whole and made me complete and gave me such love and satisfaction. uh I lost what I thought was my only contact with her. Her physical body disappeared. She died. But here's the great thing about grief. The great thing about grief is that it was like it focused everything. It made me realize the depth and the value and the breadth of everything that she is to me. So nothing else mattered to me. I had to find her again. I had to find how can I feel her again? How can I find her? You know, but the thing is she was always in the same place. She was always right here in my heart and in my mind and in my soul, I guess you could say. And I just had to look for her where she was,
Right,
right? Look for her where she is. That's where she always was, I mean, that's where she is still. And then when I die, okay, that will all be as physical as it is here. It will all be made physical as it is here. And she's, it's, she, this is like a whole metaphysical thing about how all this works. And I guess some people might call that spiritual, but I just don't really consider it that. That's just the way things work. Like Abraham is talking about source. Source doesn't care what you do, what you
Yeah.
put your intentions towards. If we would call it good or evil, source doesn't care. You have your intentions, and uh, I think, well, didn't somebody once ask Abraham about being a boxer or being a criminal or something? And it's like her response was, source doesn't care what you want to do. Do whatever you want to do, you know?
Yes.
And so it's like I don't really think of things in that kind of terms. It's if people want to be do whatever they want to do with their lives and head for any direction they want, that's fine. Let them. But that for me, and I know for you, Mary Beth, is if I believe this, I believe that I can have anything I want.
Yes.
I believe I can create anything I want in the afterlife. Uh, and so, what do my thoughts turn to? Do I want to build an empire in the afterlife? I couldn't care less about that. Do I want to have a harem in the afterlife? Good God, no. Do I want to have fame? I don't want fame. I don't care about any of that. None of that matters to me. The only thing that makes the afterlife worth having to me is Irene. That's it. That's if if I die and Irene and I are living in a cardboard box on a street somewhere, I'm good to go. I don't need anything other than that. So
My
because
issue, I'm
because
sorry.
she because because she is my heart. She doesn't just live in my heart. She is my heart, and she is what makes anything worth thinking about or enjoying. So anyway, go ahead.
Oh, what was I going to say? Something in oh, I know. I was going to say something incredibly wise. My issue with spirituality as like a religion or any religions and things like that, they all have good things to offer. But my problem with them is most of them are centered on you should be a good person, you should do these good acts, you should do ABCD to be a good person to qualify for a good afterlife. I mean, clearly in Catholicism, it was that you had to lead a good, I mean, it was a outspoken, it wasn't an inferred message, it was a direct message. You better behave in these certain ways in order to ingratiate yourself to God. And then you would get, if you live, if you live a good enough life and you die without sin on your soul, then you would get to gaze upon the face of God for all of eternity. And I like Abraham because Abraham it's very neutral. It's like you get what you think about and what you put your focus on the most. And if you want to be, they call it uplifter. If you want to be an uplifter, if you want to help others, be an uplifter. If you don't, that's fine too. We're just we're an endless source of love to you, and you can accept it and everything that comes with it, or you can choose other things. It's totally, totally up to you.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are uncomfortable with that, I think, because they don't like that. They don't really like taking responsibility, and they think that they see life as something that happens to them. So when their partner or spouse dies and they're devastated, they just think that that's, life. Sometimes they think it's life punishing them, like, oh, what did I do to deserve this and this and this? But when from coming from a totally different perspective than that and seeing this as something really natural and beautiful. And to see, this is something else I learned from you, William, to see the benefit in any unwanted situation. I certainly didn't want Paul to die. I didn't want him to get cancer. I wouldn't wish that on anyone. But there was benefits to it. And it increased our love even more. And then when he died, I thought I loved him more than any human could love another. I remember him saying to me not long before, it was toward the end of his life, but he wasn't particularly ill this one day. And I said, can you just believe this relationship we have, how magnificent it is? And he said to me, you saved my life. So it was those kinds of similar feelings to what you are describing with Irene. And it had, I don't know, I've sort of lost my train of thought there. But anyway, it's not tied to what comes after this life is for us, for me, is not tied to, how many good charitable works I do. But the interesting thing is, the more I'm aligned with Paul and our love, and the love we share and the magnificence of that, the more I feel like being generous. I like helping other people. And so when I'm feeling up and happy and totally in love, and the birds are singing and the flowers are blooming and all of that, I feel the very best I can. And when you feel that way, I think then naturally you want to help people. Naturally you have the energy. You just shine that out to people because you're so ebullient.
Yeah. Yeah,
That's
it's like with the whole concept of the group. Neither you or I founded this group to help anybody except ourselves. You know, we just wanted a place where we could talk without getting all the criticism about what we were doing, either from the spiritual or from the secular side. Uh, and when you first approached me about starting a Facebook group, I honestly thought we're going to have maybe 5 or 6 people who want to do this. I mean, who in their right mind wants to try to do something like this? And so, you know,
Excuse me, we should tell our audience that you and I were in a different group that was similar in the sense that they believed that their partners lived on and that they could have an exclusive ongoing relationship. They didn't want to repartner. It was similar in that way. But the problem was, and they also honored any grief journey, like everybody's grief journey is unique and personal to them. And, whatever's yours is sacred to you. But you started saying that you were feeling better and better and you were journaling with Irene and all of this. And I was doing my own feel good so I can better feel Paul with me plan. And I thought, you know, what that guy's saying makes sense to me. He's the only one here who's talking about that. But I was also an admin in that group, and behind the scenes, people were starting to be suspicious of you feeling better. That's the part that a lot of people can't get. Feeling better was not okay. And they were saying something's wrong. He cannot possibly. He's setting the bar too high for the rest of our members. And I talked on the phone with my sister, Colleen, and I said to her, I don't know, Colleen, I'm in this group and, some of the stuff they're saying is good, but I'm feeling better and better. And there's only one other person in this group feeling the way I am, this guy named William. But I know that the admin are not appreciative of what he's saying. They think this cannot possibly be true. And my sister said to me, ironically, she said the one thing that people in our position never want to hear. She said, I think it's time for you to move on. And I said, what do you mean? She said, start your own group. So I approached William, and he and I had absolutely no connection at all. I didn't know him from Adam, and I just said, "Do you want to start our own group?" And he said yes. But like William just said, we did not begin it with the idea of, oh, we can help so many people. I just wanted a place where I could begin to feel better, feel closer to Paul, value and appreciate and grow and deepen this unspeakably gorgeous love that we have. That's all I wanted. And William was like minded in that. And so that's how we started it. I would love to say that I wanted to, help all the people in the world like us, but no, it didn't even occur to me.
so it's like my motivations are so non-spiritual. It's like the reason that we're doing this right here is because Craig Hogan pissed me off. For anybody who doesn't know Craig Hogan, I wonder if he's going to at some point see this. He's probably not going to appreciate it. Anyway, he runs the Seek Reality site, and he puts out a lot of great videos, and I've been referring people to those videos who want to find out about the afterlife. But more and more, it's been going off into this whole spiritual thing, and some spiritual things that neither Mary Beth or I agree with. And it just kind of, and we would, our people in our group would find troubling to think about. And so it just kind of pissed me off. And I was like, it's just, I've been waiting 8 years for somebody to put up a I don't know what you call it, like a secular afterlife group, who's somebody who didn't talk about or promote or have a spiritual agenda or a religious agenda or try to promote their spiritual beliefs on it. And I guess if you want to, you could characterize this as a spiritual belief, but from the way I look at it, is the afterlife is infinite. That, existence is infinite, and everything exists, and anything you want to explore, do, have, experience, it's all waiting for you. It's all waiting for you. You go do you. I don't expect everybody is like, I don't promote uh these romantic relationships as being the pin. I don't promote it. For me and Mary Beth and other people like us, it is the pinnacle. It's the pinnacle. But not everybody likes romance novels. Not everybody likes romance movies. I love them, but people are into different stuff. Dramas or medical dramas or horror movies or comedies, whatever. Uh, so you do you and explore whatever and I support that. You do you. You explore. If there's a pinnacle for you that is floating around like an orb in a very high spiritual realm, or however you picture that, with unconditional love for everybody. If that does it for you, I love it. You go do you. Okay. I don't want any part of that movie, but you go do you. But if you come to my door, proselytizing that and scaring my neighbors with your tales of that, you're gonna find out I can be quite the ass. And I will, I'm not, you know, a spiritual evolved kind of guy. I don't mind, going toe to toe with people who, you know, represent something that's going to give people in our group. I'm very protective of the people in our group that's going to give them nightmares or worries or upset of what can be a very fragile condition for them. Craig Hogan, you don't know everything. None of these guys know everything. I certainly don't know everything. I'm not here saying I'm like a guru or a psychiatrist or a psychologist, or that I'm an expert on everything. And that's one of the reasons that I want to do this. I don't want people to come here and think, oh, these guys are the authorities on a subject. No, we're just a couple of people who talk about this stuff. That's all we are, and that's all we're presenting ourselves as. If
When
it
we,
make
when we, William, do you remember when we started the group? I used to say, we're just two people. We're not mediums. We're not psychics. We're not grief counselor. Our group is not a grief group. We're not grief experts. We're not anything. We're not even really all that smart. We're just two people who had our most precious loves cross over, and we want to have an ongoing relationship with them that can deepen and become as beautiful as possible until we're in their arms again, until we are completely reunited in our great grand romantic reunion. That's it. And that's but we don't say this is like you just said. The difference between a lot of these other religious and spiritual groups is this is the way it is, and this is what you must aspire to if you want to move up the levels of love and da da da. And so we're not saying anything dogmatic like that. We're just saying this is what works for us. This is what makes us happy. This is what allows the rest of our human life to have meaning and purpose and beauty. And if it's not for you, it's not for you. And we bring no judgment to anybody who wants something different. That's
right, there's plenty of people who, when their partner dies, they eventually move on to another partner. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Like I said, you do you. If somebody, if you die and you live in grief the rest of your life, that's fine too. It's your path is your path to figure out and to understand and do the best you can. And I don't. I bring no authoritative universal. I'm not omniscient, guys. I have no authoritative universal powers or knowledge, to tell you what you should do or tell you what path you should be on or to tell you what's best. I don't even know what's best for myself a lot of the time. I certainly don't know what's best for other people. I don't know why they came here. I don't know why they're doing what they're doing. I don't know what their eventual goal is or what. If maybe people come here to learn stuff, maybe people come here to progress on their path. I'm not saying it doesn't happen. And I'm not saying that those things don't exist. I fully expect they do happen and they do exist. But hey, don't tell me what my path is. Don't tell me where I should be going. Don't try to tell me what's going to happen to me, whether I like it or not. I mean, uh, if I run, I've run into roadblocks, and I figured out my way around them or I figured out my way over them. This whole path has been like, after Irene died, has been like trying to hack my way through a jungle with no map. It's, I had, I mean, I have later learned that there were resources that I never found. Emanuel Swedenborg was one of them that supported all this, but I had no help. I had nobody saying this is the path forward for you. I had everybody saying this isn't a path. You can't do this. You shouldn't do this. Don't even try. There's just oblivion out there. You're not going to find anything. But as stubborn ass that I am, and it was really I had no other option. I had to be with Irene again, and to survive, to exist, I had to be with her again. And so, no matter how much pain, what kind of resistance I got, what kind of authorities told me you shouldn't do that, or you can't do that, or it doesn't exist, I just kept hacking away in a general direction that I thought might help with the tools that I had, and then lo and behold, what I found was, somebody similar, Mary Beth, who wanted the same thing, wanted to go down the same path, and then other people wanted the same thing. They wanted to go down the same path, and then more resources. I actually found more resources started popping up saying this is possible, this is real. Other people have done this. Here's this guy, Emmanuel Swedenborg, who is saying this is absolutely real. You will absolutely be together in the afterlife forever. It's a beautiful and highly esteemed thing, which I don't know about all that, but just for him to say it exists. That guy visited the afterlife and made observations and talked with people in the afterlife for 30 years towards the end of his life. And this is what he reports. Even Jürgen Zive, the great modern day astral projector, has said that this exists, that this is a real thing, that people love each other like this, and they have these kind of unions, which Emanuel Swedenborg called spiritual marriages, which I don't like the terminology. Let's call them eternal romances. but but uh, it was interesting to see and to experience that wasn't really doing any of this to help anybody. I was, except for myself and to find Irene. That was my single-minded purpose. But yet we have found all of these resources that we offer the group that absolutely support all of this. What we're talking about, absolutely support that. Yes, we will be together again. Yes, we can love each other eternally, and be in that relationship eternally, and we can basically have whatever we want. We can experience whatever we want. And while some people, I'm sure some people take that and go, I want to experience, the cartoon world, or I want to experience the orgy world, or I want to, mine is just, I just want to watch Wheel of Fortune with my wife. That's all I want.
I think though that I'll speak for myself, even not even you, William. I'll speak for myself. I think even though you and I began the group, just to have a place where we could talk together and not have anybody telling us that feeling better was bad, if you can believe that. What's come out of it though is that it's really been gratifying to have so many other people come in and and want what we want. Not that we hold that out as the only possibility, but these people say, no, I want to feel better. I want to feel closer to my spouse or my partner or whatever. And to see people who have come into the group and have met with us week after week, I don't mean we're not the authorities. By us I mean the group. people come in and meet with the group week after week, year after year, and to see them progress. Because we've had people come in. It was so funny. By the time William and I started the group, I was in good shape, pretty good shape. And William, of course, was feeling, way better as well. And then I remember one grief group, I'm sorry, one Zoom group, and the windows opened and one of our newer members came in. I mean, the whole group was relatively new. A newer member came in and she was sobbing. And I went, whoa, I thought only happy people were going to come here. And I had to really, again, not that I'm a grief counselor, not that William and I are leaders of the group or anything like that, but I had to kind of understand how to talk with people who were not at the same place I was on my grief journey. And again, I went back to, like, I learned from Abraham, one thing they said was when you're walking along a path with a friend and the friend falls in a ditch, it doesn't help the friend if you jump in the ditch with them. So I learned, I don't know if this was helpful, but it was helpful for me because I didn't want to go back into grief. I didn't want to slide back in there. So I learned to speak with people in very matter of fact ways to honor where they were and validate where they were without giving up my own happiness. And I think that bode well for me. And we saw people, and I wasn't the only person there. I mean, there were a group of people. But if someone came in like that now and it would be crying, everybody gathers around them. I mean, symbolically, everybody takes a turn talking to them and telling them how they were there and here's how they felt better and try this and I'm here for you and it's going to get better. It won't hurt this much for so long. Your person is right there. They have their arm around you. All the lovely, lovely, lovely things. And so I'm very proud of I, I'm proud of how everybody in the group comes together and helps to support each other. And one of my favorite quotes is by Ram. This don't rail against this word, William. The spiritual leader, the guru, Ram Dass, who said, "We're all just walking each other home."
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's been one of the great things about the group. One of the great, I don't know, perks, I guess, is for one thing, is yeah, I think some of you mentioned it at some point that it's really a peer-to-peer support group. Okay, there's nobody laying down authority or rules or that type of stuff. Now we do have rules, and there's things we don't discuss, like politics or social issues, that type of thing, because that's not what this group is about. This group, we all have a common bond of tragedy and grief and love. That's what we all have in this group as a common bond. And it's to me, that's the strong, that's, I don't know how you get stronger than that, a stronger bond than that. Well, I mean, besides us with our partners, but for like a family or for a group of people, that's a pretty bonding experience. And there have been people who have come in and have been comforted by the group and then have left the group. Yeah, and that's fine. It's not like we're going to hunt you down. We're not a cult. So, so
if
if we, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I said we've had people who've repartnered eventually.
Yeah, yeah. So that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. So, what I was going to say is it is rewarding because Mary Beth, you and I have both seen this to see people come in just abject misery and in just incredible pain and where it's brave for them just to share, if they come to the Zoom, they'll be sobbing, and the pain is overwhelming to them, and to see that over the course of I don't know a year, or 2 years, or 3 years, uh, they feel better. They feel much better, and there are several members are really kind of well past the grief part of their journey and find this to be a very wonderful, thrilling, magical thing. That this type of relationship is so unique and it's so rare and it's such a great opportunity to go deeper with our partners and to go deeper with the relationship and to see life a different way. You know, when you understand that you are like eternal and that your love with this person is didn't end and it will continue. And at some point, you're going to be beyond all of these worries here and these kind of concerns. It changes you. You know, it's like the death of Irene led me down a path that completely changed me. It completely changed how I relate to people. I'll tell you right now. I mean, I'm regularly, you know, in the Zoom uh, uh, as the host with a whole bunch of people, and it's not just that it's a whole bunch of people; it's a whole bunch of women. And me being in front of a whole bunch of people, or being in front of a whole bunch of women, and feeling entirely comfortable and entirely at ease, and feeling like these people, that's a completely new sensation for me that this group brought to me. That's a completely new thing for me to have a bunch of people I really do consider family and friends. And but but it's just a whole different way of looking at life, and it's a whole different way of experiencing life when you know that all of this is in front of you, that all of this exists now and it's still in front of you. And it's wonderful. It makes me feel like I've won. It's like I have won the game of life. You know, I have everything I want. I have found everything I want, and I know I will have everything I want for eternity. And it's just everything to me. So, do you have any final thoughts, Mary Beth?
No, I didn't know if in the chat if people ask questions. I
I
didn't.
no, they were asking questions like, "Will raising, will putting an emoji ruin the recording?" It's not going to ruin anything. There's always editing for whatever happens, so it's all fine. But we're coming to the end now, pretty quick, and I'll stop recording, and we'll talk to whoever might be in the gallery. We can't see you guys because I have a full view of the recordings here.
Thank
So
you. And thank you, everybody who's part of this whole, we're kind of, I guess, sort of pioneers in the sense that you can go through the most horrific grief and come to the other side. And it's like finding the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. It's so magical and fabulous, but you can't experience it until you experience it. And so that's what, I mean, I'm just so happy to see so many people come to the other end of it, and you never want to go back. I live now and later. I live for now with Paul and me and all the beauty we have, and for later, what's coming later. That's what I live for.
yes, this has become just the most delicious, joyful, amazing thing that I could have never imagined. I could never have imagined getting to this point.
Yeah.
Uh,
And I did have some support. I wanted to mention in the beginning, you said some people in my family were very, very supportive, but now it doesn't matter really. I mean, I appreciate the support, but it doesn't matter. What matters is that I'm solid in my knowing
yeah,
and always solid in my love for Paul and with Paul. So, as happiest, most fortunate person on the planet.
I feel the same way. And on that happy note, I will hit the button here. Uh, Thanks, everybody. We're probably going to do this again, but I'm not going to end the meeting just yet. I'm just going to end this recording if I figure out how. Okay.